When it comes to PvP, you could have the best build, all the god roll armor and weapons, but still find yourself struggling. This can be due to needing more practice, but also can be a result of not having the most optimal settings in-game, which can lead to lower frames, worse visual quality, and higher latency, resulting in slower response times. So in today's video, we're covering the sensitivity I recommend and how to find your sensitivity, keybinds, peripherals that could help you elevate your game, and graphic settings to ensure you can have the clearest visual of your enemy. All these things combined can ensure you can react to your opponents as quickly as possible without having to worry about accidentally popping your super and possibly costing you a match. Now let's get into the video, and if you find this helpful, consider dropping a like as it helps support the channel. Starting with my sensitivity, and as you can see here, my look sensitivity is 3. And my ADS sensitivity modifier is 0.9. And now for some of you, I'm sure you're thinking 3, like that is so low. And that is because I actually raised my DPI. So before, I think I had this around 8 or 9, and I had my DPI at 400. But from doing some research, I actually found that by increasing your DPI, or your dots per inch, basically your sensitivity of your mouse specifically, that will actually help with latency. So what I did is I kind of inverted it. So I increased the DPI on my mouse to 1200 or 1200, and then brought my look sensitivity in game to compensate for that additional speed down to 3. And this is what creates what's called your eDPI. And essentially this is your overall sensitivity when you combine the DPI of your mouse with the look sensitivity in the particular game you're playing. So my eDPI would be 3 times 1200, which is 3600. So my eDPI is 3600, and that is what feels great for me in game. Now, how I landed on this sensitivity is really finding a nice combination between being able to look around and adjust my aim very quickly when I'm not ADSing, but still having very solid aim when I am ADSing or aiming down sights. And so I found with an eDPI of 3600, that is really what is a sweet spot for me. Another thing I like to do as well, and this you can kind of probably do on controller, but it's gonna be more helpful for mouse and keyboard, is I like to be able to do at least a 180 without my mouse going off of my mouse pad. And so by doing that test is how I kind of helps me find my optimal eDPI, or overall look sensitivity. And then for my ADS modifier, I just brought it down to 0.9 just to help me for when I'm ADSing, to make it a little bit more controllable. This change right here, changing my ADS sensitivity modifier down to 0.9, was actually a huge difference maker when it came to, again, finding that balance between being able to look around, swing around in terms of your view, especially in Destiny where you have hunters jumping super high in the air and you have to be able to aim vertically and quite high very quickly. And so this allowed me to maintain that ability to look around, look up, look down, left, right, sideways, whatever, as quickly as possible, but then balance that with a very solid and stable, for me, ADS sensitivity. And so a lot of people, they don't touch their ADS sensitivity modifier enough. I think this is something you can tune to find that best of both worlds, because what you often will find is people have really high look sensitivity or an overall eDPI depending on your platform, and they can move around and look around like crazy, but then you can tell the second they go down to ADS, because their sensitivity is so high, it makes their aims, you can see with my mouse like shaking a little bit more jittery, and so they're not quite as accurate, and they have a harder time making those micro adjustments and tracking their opponents. But again, this is something I would really recommend toying around with, and then whatever you decide to go with, give it a week or two to really set in and rebuild your muscle memory. People will try a new sensitivity and have one good game and be like, this is my new sensitivity. Give it a couple of days, a week or two at the very least, I would say, to give you time to build that muscle memory, and understand that when you first switch, especially if you're doing a big change, it's going to be very difficult because your muscle memory is going to be totally off. So just being patient as you mess with your look sensitivity. Getting into my keybinds, and we'll also talk about a little bit the keybinds I recommend. Move forward, left, back, all that kind of stuff is going to be WASD, so nothing too crazy there. My finisher is G, because I don't really use my finisher in PvP that much. Emotes, again, can be whatever you feel is best. Again, it's not going to really impact overall performance. Push talk, again, whatever you would like if you're even using that. Return to orbit, mine's just O. Again, doesn't really matter. My fire is the default, so my left click on my mouse. My reload is R, which I believe is default as well. My melee I have bound to like my back left side button on my mouse. The reason I like to do this is because it allows me to kind of maintain my aim while meleeing in the game, which I prefer. So again, the more I can maintain my aim no matter what I'm doing. If I have a keybind that allows me to do another thing while maintaining that, I'm going to do that, which is why I chose this. I actually don't have a bind for my charge melee. I probably should, like a charge and uncharged, but honestly, I just don't find it's like that big of a difference maker for me and my playstyle. If I was running a very melee-centric build where I'm using my melee a lot and relying on it, or if I was really focused on like using it within something like Shadebinder for Warlock and using that melee freeze, I would maybe toy with this a little bit more, but for me, I don't use it. For zoom, I use hold to zoom, which I want to say is default as well. Again, I like this because it allows me to zoom in and zoom out, have really strong control of that. Toggle zoom, not a big fan. I don't like having to click and unclick it. I rather just hold it, and it kind of helps me almost find like a cadence with my aim in a sense by using hold zoom. Light attack, heavy attack, I'm gonna skip over that block. Again, skipping over that. Jump, again, is just my space bar, which is default. I prefer to use hold sprint. I do not like using toggle sprint. I like using hold sprint because again, I like to have as much control, manual control over whatever my character is doing in the game. And so I feel with hold sprint, like it makes sense in my mind as I'm playing that as I'm holding this, I'm gonna continue sprinting. And I know the second I let go of it, it's gonna stop. I don't have to like just press it once. To me, that doesn't match what I would be feeling in game. Hold crouch is what I use here. I also have toggle crouch to control, but I literally never use toggle crouch. I use hold crouch just like I use hold sprint, because again, I want to be able to hold that crouch exactly as long as I want, knowing the second I let it go, my character is going to stop crouching or stand essentially. And so I like that manual feel of that. For my class ability, I use Z. Again, this is all to kind of keep my keybinds all as close as possible to my WASD as possible. And so for my class ability, I can easily just pop that. If I was running something like Hunter, I would probably rebound this to like my scroll wheel up like I have for my air move. So if I'm using like Icarus Dash on Warlock, if I scroll up, I'm gonna do my Icarus Dash. If I was using Hunter, I would do the same thing. The reason for that is because I don't want to have to worry about taking my finger off of one of the WASDs, thus impeding my ability to dodge or air move directionally. So that's why if I'm using Icarus Dash, I keep it on my scroll wheel up so I can dodge in whatever direction I want and not have to worry about having to take my fingers off of one of the WASD. So again, I'm using Hunter class ability, and that dodge, I would use this as a scroll wheel up. And again, I talked about air move. Interact, I use Alt. I like using Alt so that way I can move around and strafe and dodge, especially and use Alt to like revive a teammate or pick up heavy. This is especially helpful in a mode like Trials where you're rezzing your teammates. The ability to res and like strafe and fire at the same time has literally helped me get reses off and win rounds. So I think this is also like an underrated keybind to be thinking about. I highly recommend using something like Alt that allows you to be able to move around and still at the very least move left to right and strafe while you interact or res your teammate. For my grenade, same kind of concept overall you're seeing here. I use my grenade, my grenade is my front left side button on my mouse. Again, this allows me to just effectively aim my grenade and just throw it at will. And so I really like having it bound there. Just same kind of idea as my melee. So again, having things bound to where they don't negatively impact my aim, and I can still use them very effectively. For my super, it's kind of hard to see here, but I click on my middle mouse wheel. So I click on my mouse wheel button to pop my super. The reason I like this is because it's like it's a little bit of a firmer press, at least for my mouse, on my middle mouse button. And so what that means is I'm not gonna accidentally like fat finger and press my super. I've never accidentally pressed my super when like using my scroll wheel up for like my air move or anything like that, or if I was using it for a class ability, because that middle mouse button has a firmer press. So if I'm pressing and popping my super, it's gonna be very intentional. I'm never gonna fat finger my super or anything like that. So again, somewhat different maybe for some people, but I definitely would recommend giving it a try, because again, it's just a very straightforward, just simple button to click that's gonna be very close to where your fingers are already at, I guess. Stasis breakout, I use V or Q, I guess, but again, don't find myself using this a lot lately, thankfully. But yeah, that's that. For my switching between weapons, some people like to use their scroll wheel for this one. I personally love using 1, 2, 3 because again, it's just that manual feel. The scroll wheel feels a little weird for me, and so using the 1, 2, 3 allows me to just constantly switch very easily and very intentionally between my weapons. So that's why I prefer using these keybinds right here. And I think overall that's going to cover it for our overall keybinds. But essentially the general concept I say for these keybinds is putting the keybinds in a place where you can still like strafe and move and aim, and still use a lot of these abilities or actions without either of those being severely impacted. And so as long as you use that thought process as you go and try to choose your keybinds, you're usually going to be in a pretty good spot. But again, these are my keybinds here that I've kind of established over years and years and years of playing Destiny that I found have worked best for me. And it's typically the keybinds I take into other shooters as well. Next, we have to talk about peripherals. And when talking about peripherals, we have to start with the one that will single-handedly impact your gaming experience the most in Destiny 2, and that's going to be your monitor. Upgrading to a high refresh rate monitor with a clear picture and low latency can result in immediate improvements to your game. This is especially noticeable when switching from a television, which typically has a lower refresh rate and a much slower response time. For a monitor that is great for any platform, I recommend the BenQ EX2710U. BenQ has been well known for making incredible monitors, and this monitor is a brand new 4K 144Hz monitor with a 27-inch IPS display with a 1 millisecond response time and HDMI 2.1, meaning you'll be able to take advantage of those higher 120Hz refresh rates on Xbox Series X and PS5. If those specs seem like a lot, to keep it simple, it means the monitor will provide a crisp 4K image with true to life colors and low latency due to the IPS panel, meaning your aim in Destiny 2 will respond as fast as you do. This monitor also comes with light tuner technology, which allows you to adjust performance of light and shadows based on your preference. This is great for PvP in Destiny 2, since I can adjust the various levels of light to ensure I don't lose my enemies in darker parts of the map. It also packs a feature called HDRI plus Eye Care, which detects current ambient levels and automatically adjusts your screen brightness to reduce fatigue for longer gaming sessions, and it's allowed me to grind longer without feeling fatigued. This is also the first monitor I've owned that packs 2.1 channel speakers that will ensure you stay immersed in the game, and as someone who has only used headphones before gaming, it was great to have that option to relax, take off my headphones, and just casually farm weapons in PvE. Now all of these settings are great, but can be hard to adjust on some monitors, but luckily this one comes with a remote control and OSD mapping, so making changes to settings is easy to manipulate and allow me to perfect my monitor settings with ease. Now BenQ did send me this monitor to try and keep, but didn't review this video beforehand, and everything expressed here is my genuine opinion. And I can say I've really enjoyed the past couple weeks with this monitor, so much so that it is my new main gaming monitor, replacing my previous 1440p 240Hz monitor. For anyone looking to upgrade their monitor, they can find the link to this one in the description below. For our next peripheral that's going to really make a huge difference in your game, it's going to be your mouse. And as you can see, as I'm going to pull up on screen here, I currently use the Viper Ultimate. Now the nice thing about the Viper line of devices is there's multiple types of Vipers for different hand sizes, different features, but the most important thing when it comes to your mouse is not necessarily the brand or any of that, is it's going to be the shape of your mouse. So this is the current mouse I use right now. I currently have the Razer Viper Ultimate, and I recently ordered the Model O Pro, so I'm gonna be having that coming hopefully pretty shortly here. And as you can see, it's not a much different shape than the Razer Viper Ultimate, and that's what really is the main decision maker for me on the mouse, is the weight and the overall shape. So this is what you're going to want to really be looking for and paying attention to when it comes to choosing a mouse. Now there's lots of great YouTubers out there that do videos on mouses and what's your best for your hand size and your type of grip, etc, etc. I'm not going to get all that today, but just know your mouse is a very important choice. As someone who's tried many mice in my time, I've had a mouse that was too big, I've had a mouse that was too heavy, I had a mouse that's too small, and everything in between, and it truly does make a huge difference in your aim in Destiny 2. So this is something I would really take seriously when deciding what mouse you want to choose, because it will impact your game almost as much, but maybe not quite as much as your monitor. And as far as my controller players out there, the biggest thing I would say when it comes to playing on controller, just from people I've talked to, is you're gonna want to get controllers with additional paddles. I know Xbox has one of their own. There's multiple controller companies that offer controllers with paddles. And again, this ties back into when we were talking about keybinds. Having paddles on your controller is gonna allow you to do your melee, your grenades, super different things like that without having to take your thumb off your thumbstick and make it to where you have to temporarily stop aiming even for a second, because that second can be the difference between life and death in game. So getting a controller with paddles is going to make the biggest difference here. And as far as a keyboard for PC, I'm not going to really get too much into keyboards, honestly, because I don't feel like overall it impacts your performance that much. I mean, obviously you get certain types of switches and things like that. We can get really into different switches on keyboards, but overall I don't feel like it's going to make the world of difference like some people claim. Ultimately, get a keyboard that fits best and looks best aesthetically for your setup is usually the mindset I have. I prefer 60 to 65% keyboards just to give me the extra real estate, because also I don't typically use like the numpad and other keys like that on my keyboard. But again, choosing the keyboard that fits best for your setup and from a functionality standpoint is going to be the best option there. Now, discussing our video settings for Destiny 2, and this is what's going to allow us to make sure we're getting the most out of our game, getting the most frames, and really what we're trying to do here is find a nice balance between quality and the crispness of the images and like how the guns and models look, and high frames. So as you can see, starting at the top, we're in windowed mode, windowed full screen. I already know people are probably screaming from the high heavens, Appa, why aren't you in full screen? Well, in the past, full screen was a much better option for latency and overall performance, but as of I don't know how long ago, Bungie did come out with a TWAB that basically came out and said that they were using a different model, basically software model, something like that within Destiny 2, which essentially means windowed full screen should provide the same or better performance compared to exclusive full screen, and that is exactly read from that specific TWAB many months ago, meaning running windowed full screen or full screen, they're both should offer similar, or with windowed possibly even better performance. And so with that, I run windowed because I like to be able to come in and out of my game very easily without my computer freaking out from tabbing out from full screen. And so personally, as I've bounced back and forth between these, I truly don't see large enough a difference to use exclusively full screen. So I recommend windowed full screen unless you really somehow notice that big of a difference, but it could just all be some kind of like placebo effect essentially. In terms of a resolution, I'm rocking a 4K resolution again to match my monitor, and this is what you would want to do as well. VSync, you're gonna want this off, and then I put a frame rate cap on my monitor because overall my monitor doesn't go beyond 144, and I just try to keep it locked at that 144. I don't need to overtax my GPU just to get more frames. If you want to uncap this and get as many frames as possible, that's fine. But again, in Destiny, sometimes based on all the effects and everything that's going on, what you'll notice is the frames can drop rather significantly sometimes. So I rather cap it at the top, whatever my monitor is. If your monitor is 240 hertz, of course, cap it to that if you'd like. But then that means my drop is less significant at 144 down to whatever it may go to. Field of view, I run 105, but in the past I used to say 105 is the best. But a friend of mine, Shadow, did a really great video on FOV, which I'll try to link down below. And there's lots of great reasons to use different FOVs. I personally like 105 because that's what I've been playing on forever, and I just like having the larger field of view. But for some people, playing on like 95 can be really good. It also makes your enemies artificially bigger in a sense, because again, and thus making them easier to hit. So there are some benefits here. Screen bounds and brightness, this is going to be all personal preference and just making sure it matches your monitor. Getting into our graphics quality, and this is where we're really going to try to find that balance between quality and frames. And I'm just going to kind of go through SMMA. I keep this on because I think, if I recall correctly, anti-aliasing keeps it from your images from having super jagged edges. Screen space ambient occlusion, I just put this on 3D because I feel like it still looks pretty good, and overall does not significantly increase or decrease my frames, so I rather just have this on to give it a little bit more quality. Texture anisotropy, sorry, I probably butchered that. I keep it at 16 times. Again, because I don't find it significantly enough impacts my frames one way or the other. Texture quality, same thing. I run this on highest because again, I find almost no impact in my frames overall. Shadow quality is something I put on lowest. Again, this makes it to where the shadows in game are lower and not as impactful. Again, makes enemies easier to see. Also, I did find this can help increase your frames a tiny bit. Not going to be anything crazy because Destiny 2 is pretty well optimized from a graphics standpoint, but shadow quality is something I would put on lowest. Depth of field, I turn this off because again, I don't want any kind of blur effect or anything like that. I want to make sure everything is clear as possible. Environmental detail distance, I put this on high, and character detail distance, I put this on high. Because again, I just want those characters and the environment to still look super crisp. And kind of similar to the other things I mentioned, none of these really, as you go between these three options, significantly impact your frames all that much, but they will make your game look terrible. Foliage detail distance, I put this low because who cares about the foliage? This I go medium as well because again, foliage, who cares? Foliage being like plants and stuff. Light shafts, I go just low here because I don't find that super important. But again, I don't think there's any impact from what I'm able to tell between medium and high. Motion blur, you definitely want this off. This can significantly impact, and you can kind of see my RAM usage go up, VRAM usage go up a little bit here with that. We're gonna keep that off. I find this can be very distracting, can make it very hard to track enemies when motion blur is on, so you want to keep that off. Wind pulse I keep off as well because again, this again not gonna be significant, but it's just not really gonna add any benefit. Render resolution, I put this at 100. You can like lower this and it will give you some additional frames, but I find I'd rather just keep it at base level and not mess with it too much. HDR, I will use this occasionally, very rarely, mainly when I'm playing PvE or like when I was using like this monitor, I was trying to take advantage of it, I would use it. But other than that, if I'm playing PvP, I typically have this off. Chromatic aberration and film grain I both have off because I just find there's like a little bit too extra effects that I personally don't prefer, but I don't think they should negatively impact your gameplay overall too much. Let's run through sound. This is going to be all very much personal preference. I personally turn my music all the way down unless I'm playing like a specific raid or it's a new season. Then I'll have the music on because I want to hear all the new music. But overall, I have the music turned off so then I can just clearly hear footsteps and just my enemies around me as clear as possible. And then dialogue I turn down a little bit. I make sure my SFX volume or sound effects volume is 5. So whatever is comfortable for you on the sound effects standpoint is what I would make sure you put the highest so you can hear those footsteps and things going on around you and really get those audio cues. As far as gameplay, as you can see, I have colorblind mode off. I do have subtitles. I do PC default for reticle location. I changed my reticle to red because I love red and black, so that's why I do red. Helmet, I just do always on, whatever. FPS display, I like this. I mean, sometimes I'll have this on and off depending if I'm trying to just really track my frames. But overall, I find my frames are fairly stable, and I hate that it's like a bright green in the top right corner. I think visually and aesthetically it does not look very good. So I go ahead and just turn that off. Outside of that, that is going to be my graphics settings, and I'll kind of just go through it really good here. But again, any additions or suggestions that you all use to really get the most performance out of Destiny 2, please drop in the comments down below. I'm always looking to tweak and mess with my settings more to get the most out of my PC and the most performance out of Destiny. So hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will catch you guys in the next one.